We've all heard the saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure. This is sometimes true. Sometimes unique items can be found in mounds of trash. But not everything we consume has to end up in the trash. There are lots of options for getting rid of unused or unwanted items, such as reusing, repurposing, or recycling. These economically, environmentally friendly, and conscious ways of disposing of items that you do not want anymore are more beneficial to the majority of the time than allowing them to end up in a landfill, and in turn having to have those items remanufactured from raw materials just to create them over and over again. Recycling is not some new thing. It has actually been around in one form or another for generations. Throughout most of the last few centuries, people have taken their own bags to the grocery stores for getting groceries and purchasing items, and they repurposed material for making clothing and bedding. They didn't have the luxury of having plastic and bottled water. They drank out of reusable cups and had cloth bags and glass bottles that they reused over and over again, thus cutting down on landfill waste without even having a second thought about it. I like to think that I'm an environmentally conscious person myself. One of the ways I do this is through recycling a lot of the items that my household takes in. I have a lot of personal experience with recycling and repurposing of multiple different materials. Let me show you that the benefits of recycling outweigh the costs. These include the benefits to the community, benefits to the environment, and how you can participate in these benefits. You've all heard the saying, every little bit helps. That can be in the context of many different things, but especially in recycling, it's no different. There are many benefits to recycling, as I will now show you. Let's first take a look at some of the most common recycled items. Aluminum is actually one of the most common recycled items in the entire United States. According to aluminum.org, in 2012, industry in the United States recycled 67% of the aluminum cans that were produced. This energy that was saved from recycling this aluminum and the materials and manufacturing that these materials are made from, the ore actually, is equated to approximately 19 million barrels of crude oil that was saved by recycling. That's enough oil to fuel 1.7 million cars for an entire year's time. Aluminum.org says that it takes only 5% of the energy to produce recycled aluminum than it does to produce aluminum from ore. Glass, clear and colored, and plastics, 1 through 7, as marked on the bottom of most containers, and paper do not compare to the amounts of aluminum that are recycled every year, but are still very viable items for recycling. One of the most beneficial aspects of recycling is the exceptionally large impact that it has on the economy and the local community. First off, the mere fact of having recycling creates jobs in local businesses in many sectors throughout the community. There have to be businesses that haul the materials, process them, and then again sell them as recovered material, as well as having the businesses that take the recycled material and manufacture new materials from them. According to the EPA, there's approximately 56,000 recycling centers across the United States that employ over 1 million people and have revenues exceeding $236 billion annually. This massive amount of revenue and employment would not be possible without recycling. The recycling industry also generates billions in tax revenue at the federal, state, and local levels. Recycling is a value-added process. That process takes something of little intrinsic value, processes it, and it becomes something of more value. Unlike the waste management industry, which is not a value-added process, it is merely just a disposal process. Now on to one of the more disputed points, or points of contention regarding recycling, energy use. The amount of energy saved from recycling materials actually varies by the type of material. As mentioned previously, aluminum saves 95% of the energy that it would take to create aluminum. The EPA says that almost all recycling processes achieve significant savings over creating new materials from virgin materials. In the United States, about 4% of the annual energy usage is used to create plastics. Some of this energy can be recovered and reduced through recycling of plastics. In the manufacturing and the glass industry, they see substantial drops in energy usage in its furnaces by 2 to 3% for every 10% of recycled glass cutlet that is used in their processes. This substantial savings keeps production costs down, along with keeping, ultimately, the consumers from inheriting that cost. Another added benefit to consumers is not one that is necessarily directly seen by them, but mostly by the waste management industry. Look at it this way. Every cubic meter of recycled material is a cubic meter of landfill space that isn't being used up by that material. Hundreds of millions of cubic meters of recyclable material are diverted every year from landfills into recycling centers. This massive amount of material would not, if recycled, be placed in a landfill, and the U.S. would need potentially hundreds of additional landfills to facilitate this. And another impact can be seen is the fact that using these materials in recycling processes relieves some of the pressures on natural forestation and mining industry by having less a requirement for raw materials such as trees, ores, minerals, and other virgin materials. The EPA actually estimates that recycling 1 ton of paper saves 17 trees and 4,000 gallons of water. Of course, this process takes energy to process this material, but the benefits from conserving the water and deforestation outweigh the costs of the expended energy. The non-renewable resources such as fuels and raw materials are in limited supply. Recycling keeps these materials out of landfills and can only benefit future generations. One of the major impacts for human activities in general is the increased emissions and carbon monoxide and greenhouse gases. These greenhouse gases have altered the composition of the atmosphere as we have become more industrial as a nation. We are aware that we cause this global ecological impact and climate change. By the things we do, recycling is a process that actually mitigates these impacts. In 2005, the EPA estimated that through a combination of lower methane emissions, energy savings, and forest preservation, that recycling would avoid 48 million tons of carbon emissions, the equivalent of removing 36 million cars from the roadway for a year. Now that you know some of the impacts of waste and benefits of recycling, let me tell you how you can participate in reducing the amount of trash that you add to landfills through recycling. The reasons you may choose to participate in recycling may vary. Let me tell you why and how I participate. In my household, we recycle all of our cardboard, glass bottles and jars, cans, like these, both aluminum and steel, plastics, such as bottles, and even plastic bags, which actually this one is made from 100% recycled material, and paper, along with batteries, TVs, computers, electronics, printer cartridges, and plastics. That's all that I recycled from my family. You might be thinking, wow, that's it must take a lot of time to do that. Well, it doesn't. We actually keep bags in our garage that we get from going grocery shopping, and we separate the trash as we need to into the recycling containers. Every couple of weeks or once a month, we take those containers down as on our way to the grocery store, and we drop them off right outside the PX in the recycling center. It's actually located right next to the commissary, so it's actually really convenient. The only thing that would be more convenient is actually having it picked up at our house, which is available out in the area that we live, but we just choose not to pay for it. We rarely even have half of our trash can full every week when we dispose of our trash. The electronics are a little bit different, but if you didn't know, Best Buy actually takes all electronics, cables, and batteries up to the size of a 37-inch TV, and they'll recycle it for free. Not too difficult to remember to take those items as long as you know that you're going there in advance. But luckily, we don't have to get rid of those kind of items very often. We dispose of the majority of our recyclables on post. Fort Riley itself has a decent recycling program. Its main building is actually located on Camp Funston and takes care of all the recycling for on-post housing, along with all the numerous containers located across post by the PX, the shopette, the Class 6, and our hangar. They recycle the majority of the items that most recycling centers do, and they recycle about 17 tons of recyclable material a month. It's a pretty good portion that they're actually keeping out of the landfills. The proceeds that they earn from a recycling center on post actually is provided to the MWR for community recreational activities. This is a process that by recycling is creating jobs in the community, benefiting the environment through reducing landfill space, and providing funding for other activities. So, can one man's trash be another man's treasure? I like to think that all of our trash that is capable of being recycled can be considered a treasure that will aid in the preserving of our environment for future generations, and one that will continually provide economic growth and jobs for our community. I hope that you will strongly consider looking into recycling in your area and the materials that you can recycle in your area. And think of the impact that just you could make on your local environment just through recycling. Know that you, and you only, have the ability to affect change around you, and recycling will provide a beneficial change for everyone around you and for our future generations. Thank you.